Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Task Force meeting that is about to host its first CLE. We have a course number for that, which I will put into the chat. That course number is 5776. We're honored and very thankful to have two presenters who are going to talk about blockchain and tokenization made simple. That's the title of the presentation. So let me introduce them quickly and let them do their thing. First, we have Daniel Mayland. Daniel is a partner with the firm Mark Migdal and Hayden and a trial lawyer with a focus on complex civil disputes and disputes involving emerging technologies. Daniel is a Blue Key graduate of the University of Florida and earned his JD from Emory Law School and practiced law at white shoe firms on Wall Street before transitioning back home to Miami. With Daniel is Herwig Konings. He is a serial entrepreneur, investor, and adventure capitalist, and is the founding partner and CEO of the Security Token Group and Security Token Market. Herwig was born in Belgium, raised in New Jersey, and is a graduate of the University of Miami. He is widely considered to be a pioneer in the security token industry and a leader in the crypto and fintech space. We appreciate both of you doing this, and take it away, guys. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Woody. I'm going to share my screen. As to questions, everyone, we're going to try and get through a lot slowly, clearly, and hopefully understandably in an hour. And we'll have question and answer at the end. But also if there's something pressing or you have a really good joke, feel free to just shout it out. You can unmute. But otherwise, thanks for keeping it on mute. So let me share my screen.
And thanks for having us.
Everyone see that? We good to go? All right. So thank you, Woody, for the kind introduction. I've actually been a member of this task force for 3 years, and it's been very cool to see the developments in this space and where this technology has gone. Unfortunately, a lot of the slides that we're going to see now are the same that you would have seen 3 years ago when I joined the task force, because the technology's basics haven't changed. What's neat, though, is the stuff that Herwig is doing, because he actually is a key player in this world, and this is his 9-to-5 job, and he's going to be able to really bring home how real this technology is and how it is going to make a big difference in your lives going forward, starting with today, with what you learned. So if you'd like to get in contact with us, here's our information. And of course, we're going to be making this presentation, a video of it and the deck available on the website, and we can email it around, and we're happy to share it. So to run through what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be going through what is blockchain. We're going to hit on smart contracts briefly. We're going to then transition into Herwig's world of tokenization, how the technology is being used now, where it's going, and then of course takeaways, which is everyone's favorite form of food. And so starting off with what is blockchain? How many people here, and you could show your hands, have heard of Satoshi Nakamoto? All right, we don't know if Satoshi Nakamoto is one person or multiple people, but what we do know is that in 2008, a white paper was put out that sets the foundation for blockchain and cryptocurrencies as we know them today. The first actual implication of this is 2009's creation of the Bitcoin based off of Satoshi's white paper, where someone saw what Satoshi wrote and made it a practical reality. One of the reasons why Bitcoin is so well known is due to its age. 2008 is not recent. It's 2022 now. And it's been around, gained popularity, and more importantly, has remained unhacked, unchanged, and held up to what Satoshi said it would do in the white paper. Hat tip to the attorneys in South Florida who litigated the Kleinman versus Wright matter in the Southern District of Florida, who got very close, I'd say the closest yet, as to unveiling who Satoshi Nakamoto was or is, but I still don't think that they did it. Some of them think they did, but that's still yet to be played out. Importantly, blockchain is the common vernacular that's used to describe distributed ledger technology. There are a lot of people in this committee that are very familiar with this, and I'm going to say this now. The goal of this presentation is to provide a foundational sense of knowledge for anyone who might want to get involved in this space. For those of you who are practicing it already, this might seem a little bit too simple for you, but the goal is to provide an elementary understanding, so bear with me. All blockchains use distributed ledger technology, but not all distributed ledger technology is a blockchain, all right? To break that down, blockchains, and I'm going to use blockchains going forward, but really I'm referring to distributed ledger technology, is a method of keeping digital, transparent, and incorruptible distributed records of all transactions that take place across a peer-to-peer network or a series of interconnected digital devices. What's cool is that these devices could be your cell phone, your watch, your computer, your printer, anything that really could connect to another device. If I've lost you already, you're not alone. This is a great Dilbert comic where the boss comes to an employee and says, I think we should build a blockchain. And the employee says, oh God, does he understand what he said, or is it something we saw in a trade magazine ad? So the employee asks, what color do you want the blockchain? And the boss, of course, responds with, I think mauve has the most RAM. So this is a 2017 comic, and it very much still applies today. A lot of people scratch their heads when they hear this, but they know they want to get into it because they're seeing it everywhere. Blockchain and distributed ledgers work. We access them in a manner similar to how we utilize a lot of other things we take for granted in our lives, like email, all right? Blockchain has a series of protocols or rules that it follows, and we need to use applications to access those records using those rules. Now, we do the same thing with our emails, we just don't really think about it. When we use Gmail, we're using an application, or Outlook, an application that in turn will follow the rules of SMTP, the application protocol layer, to then access the general protocol layer, which is TCP/IP. So Gmail is the application that basically does the hard work to open the door for you to enter this world of email. For blockchain, we also use applications. Coinbase is a common example. There are tons of them that will then translate what we're trying to do into the language necessary to effectuate the goal, which is to keep this immutable distributed record that we could rely on that is transparent. Now, the digital ledger is the core component of all distributed ledgers. Its key characteristics are that it's distributed across a network of devices. So digital devices, we've talked about this already, cell phones, printers, your watch could all count. And what sets blockchain apart is that it's an increasing number of data records that are kept on these distributed ledgers. So once a record is entered, the next one is entered after it, and the next one is entered after it, and all the prior entries remain as they are for forevermore. They don't change. They just get built on and built on and built on. And each time those entries are entered, they're protected by cryptography and they're verified digitally. What does this mean? It's a really fancy and safe Excel spreadsheet. Think of an Excel spreadsheet that has a bunch of cells on it, except for you can't enter a cell, you can't edit a cell once it's been entered. You just have to add a new one after it that says, here's what you need to know. These cells before are no longer valid. This is what's important. And then if you enter a new one, it'll go after that. Those are the blocks. Each cell in the Excel is a block on the blockchain. It's called blockchain because each piece of information as it's added is usually done in a block of data, following another block of data, following another block of data, creating a chain. Because of this, and because of the distributed aspect of it, where it's verified and there's cryptography used, and we'll get into that, blockchain's really hard to hack. It's not unhackable, but as of now, it's the safest, most secure, and tamper-proof method of record keeping that is presently known. And there are all these discussions for another day about how safe it is, and that questions come to mind, especially when you hear about cryptocurrency theft, and then the next day in the newspaper, you see that the government was able to recover those funds. You have to wonder, how did they unwind that transaction to recover those funds? And what tools are they using if it's supposed to be so secure? But we don't know of anything more secure than this, all right? Now, there's no single definitive blockchain. There could be as many blockchains as your heart desires, so long as you are able to pay for someone to code or create one. They're also not stored in any single location. So blockchains, again, are hosted by the computers or devices that make up that network. The ones that hold all of the ledger are called nodes. And I'll get into that in a second. So remember, it's like an Excel spreadsheet, except for that Excel spreadsheet is identically duplicated across a network of computers or devices. And then they all uniformly update that spreadsheet at the same time. At the end of it, what's cool about blockchain is that you look at it and you can think, I know what I see is the same thing that everyone else that is looking at this blockchain is seeing, and we can all trust that we're seeing the same accurate information, all right? At the core of it, it's an Excel spreadsheet that everyone can view, and you can trust what's on it. Now, blockchains are broken up into two general categories. You've got public, which is anyone can look at it. Bitcoin is a good example of that. Or private or permissioned, which are proprietary distributed ledgers or blockchains, where only specific people or entities have access to them. Who here has a client that has patented a distributed ledger? Anyone here, show of hands? Well, if you represent a major bank, a lot of them have patented their own internal private distributed ledgers. They've created their own internal captive distributed ledger blockchain record-keeping systems where only they have access to it, and they can say who gets to see what aspects of it and who has what permission to do what to them. That's very different than Bitcoin, which is for the whole world, and there's no one out there who could put their arms around Bitcoin and cut people off. Now, security is what sets blockchain and distributed ledgers apart. It's the immutable part, the aspect that we could trust what's on these Excel spreadsheets more so than an Excel spreadsheet that I just save on my desktop or an Excel spreadsheet that we keep on a common server. The reason why we could trust it is because any modification to a blockchain has to be verified by one or more node, which is a device that contains the entire ledger. That means that for the record to be changed, for any modification to happen, a collection of nodes have to all agree to the change, and then that change will be made uniformly across the entire distributed ledger, and there will be multiple identical copies of it amongst all the nodes. So a node is a participating member of the network that has a complete copy of the entire blockchain, and generally, a node has to approve the change. And there's different, of course, here come a lot of words, different ways of verifying. What I like about verification is that this is the meat and potatoes why you see a lot of news stories about the tremendous power suck and power drainage that goes on with blockchain. How many people here have seen articles talking about the need for power plants or the carbon footprint of Bitcoin, right? And the concerns around that. I mean, Elon Musk even used that as an excuse for why he didn't want to accept certain cryptocurrencies at Tesla because of the carbon footprint, being a green company. Verification is the reason why all that juice is being used, because it takes a tremendous amount of energy to do one of the forms of verification, which is called proof of work verification. So consensus-based verification is what I talked about before, with a majority of the nodes saying, we all agree, hands up, we all agree, we'll all make this change to the distributed ledger, and then boom, that change happens. Proof of work verification is when a collection of authenticated, verified users, known as miners, perform a series of complex transactions on specialized computer equipment called rigs, and they do these robust, very energy heavy calculations to prove that what is going to be added onto the blockchain is proper and should be authenticated. And these miners are usually rewarded in some way or another. With cryptocurrencies, they're often rewarded with a share of the cryptocurrency. So they might get paid in Bitcoin, for example. You might see mining farms or rig farms in the news where there's just stacks of server towers. All these computers are doing is authenticating information that people want to add onto a blockchain. Because of that, it's time intensive, energy intensive. The Bitcoin blockchain is not updated every second. When there's a transaction, that transaction has to be authenticated, and then it will get grouped with all the other authenticated transactions. And then approximately every 10 minutes, all those waiting in queue transactions that have been authenticated will get grouped together into a block and added to the blockchain. And all the nodes will see that same addition across all of their distributed ledgers, and everyone will see that change and agree that what we're looking at can be trusted, and what we're looking at is the same thing that everyone else is looking at. All right, if now's a good time for me to go back to the Dilbert cartoon, I could do it, but we're plowing through, and I think you guys are following me, all right? Now, the next level of security is what's recorded on the actual blockchain. You don't just write on a blockchain, Dan Malin bought a house at this address. Instead, all information added onto a distributed ledger generally is cryptographically hashed. That means that whatever information is permanently recorded onto the blockchain, remember, it's immutable, it's going to be there forever, is converted into a unique and non-predictable value that is non-reversible, and there are formulas used to do this. It's called hashing, all right? And so a blockchain isn't an index of just basic information we could read, it's an index of gibberish, but that gibberish is intentional. And if you look at a blockchain, you could see that there's something entered there, and that hash confirms that there's something recorded there, and that hash could be decoded to reveal what is recorded there. But you can't identify just by looking at the hash what the hash represents. All right, the records are timestamped and displayed always in a sequential manner, and the sequential manner is a foundational component. Remember, Excel, another cell, another cell, another cell. The sequential manner is always there, and all the hashes prior are all there for forevermore. You could see imagine like an accounting tape coming out of a calculator. That tape goes on forever and can't be ripped and can't be modified. Now, blockchain networks live in a state of consensus where they're set up so they automatically check in with themselves to confirm that they are being accurately kept and are consistently kept across all nodes. And this is what makes them so hard to hack, because if you go in and modify a hash or modify a ledger on one node, remember a node is a device that has a complete copy of a distributed ledger on it. If you just modify one, the blockchain network's going to go around, do a consensus check, and is going to see, oh, we have an outlier on Dan's iPhone. That seems weird. Everyone else, does yours look like this? No? Okay, that outlier is not kosher. Everyone else, we're sticking with we got. All right, let's not change. You need to have what we talked about previously, that authentication process for things to be verified and added to the blockchain. And when it is, it's done to everyone. You can't just have an outlier, and that consensus checking prevents anyone from being able to go in and just change one. You have to change all of them, which is really tough when it's distributed across all devices, potentially around the world. Now, because of that, blockchain has a reputation of being immutable. You can't modify all of the ledgers as distributed. As of right now, the belief is that only a quantum computer can do that, and quantum computers aren't at that level yet, and quantum computers are a whole different level of making your head hurt. So I'm not even going to get into this. But they look like chandeliers, which is really nice, and I highly recommend Googling them. All errors can only be fixed in a blockchain by adding new entries. You can't go backwards and modify. Remember, they're immutable. And so by storing blocks of information that are identical across a network, the blockchain can't be controlled by any single entity and has no single point of failure. That also means that anyone looking at it should be able to see what's there, and that makes it transparent. There's no reason to hide it, because someone else can show you down the road next door, especially if it's public. Any node can reveal the full distributed ledger. So what does this look like? Well, if someone requests a transaction, that's that laptop in the corner. that transaction is broadcast out to the network of computers or devices that are connected to that laptop. That's the nodes. They then have to validate that request and verify whether they agree to it. And once it's verified, that information is bundled and then added to the existing blockchain. That's the bottom middle. And then boom, another device on the network can see, there it is. There's that change. All right. Now, smart contracts take it to the next level. A smart contract is a computer program that is capable of facilitating, executing, and enforcing the performance of an agreement using this technology. What is that? It's an automated process set in computer code that will happen when a certain amount of variables are put into place. What do I mean? They're coded instructions that happen automatically when certain criteria are met. And what's nice about them is that they remove delay and build in efficiency, because they remove a human component, they'll remove a paper component, they'll remove a logistics component, they'll remove the component of me having to drive to your house, so you have to get out of your house and sign the document and then go back into your house and I have to drive back to my office. There are a lot of real life practical benefits for having computers just automatically do certain things. And that's what a smart contract is. A smart contract is also a misnomer because it's not necessarily a contract in the legal sense always. It's called a smart contract because it's kind of an agreement amongst the code to do something. But from a legal point of view, just because it's a smart contract doesn't mean it's actually a smart contract. There doesn't have to be offer, acceptance, and consideration for that to play out. All right. Now, a smart contract can be really straightforward, or it could be really complex, like a Rube Goldberg machine, which is, there's the museum, I believe, of Science and Technology in Fort Lauderdale that has a great one of these, where the balls fall down and have different paths in Fort Lauderdale. A bunch of series of events have to happen in a Rube Goldberg machine automatically for the ball to reach the end. A smart contract could be that complicated, or it could be straightforward, like a pizza order. Okay. Now, you want a pizza, you go online and you find a place that has a 30-minute delivery guarantee. You place the order online, which creates a contract with the pizza place, where you put your $20 from your credit card into escrow in consideration for the pizza that they then process, bake, throw in a high-speed delivery car and get to your house in 28 minutes, beating the deadline by 2 minutes. And as a result, the $20 gets released from the escrow to the pizza place and you get your pizza. All right. Once you place your order, you didn't have to do anything further with regards to releasing your funds to the pizza place to confirm that they should receive your $20 that you placed in escrow. That transaction, in effect, is in a way a smart contract. Now, we use smart contracts every day. If you use Venmo or apps like that, those transactions in a way are smart contracts. They're just not using distributed ledgers or blockchain technology. So you say, I want to send money to this person. The app then triggers a series of events that releases the funds from your bank account or your credit card, transmits it to that person's receiving account, and then that account to their bank account. And all those transactions in between, in the olden days, would have required paper sign-off and all these other effects. And instead, they're now automated. Blockchain takes this to another level, where in the shipping industry, for example, Maersk did a proof of concept 4 years ago, where it shipped a container of flowers from Africa to Amsterdam. And that shipment usually required over 200 different written contracts for it to be effectuated for that one container, from the grower to the final delivery place. Maersk was able to automate that entire thing with IBM and reduce all of that to smart contracts that automatically executed and eliminated nearly all of those actual contracts, including the agreements with customs, with imports, with the pilot with regard to guiding the ship into the harbor. Everything was able to be automated. And that proof of concept was so successful that Maersk and IBM have now created their own company just for this purpose. Now we get into the real world of where this stuff is actually put into play. And I'm excited to introduce Herwig, who lives this every day and will make this a little bit more real for you guys, because this isn't fiction, this is his life. So Herwig, take it over.
That was a real world. That was a real world example you gave. That was fantastic. Thank you again for that amazing presentation there. I hope everyone's able to learn the basics and the foundation behind the technology, because if you can understand that, it's much easier to start understanding how actually all of this technology comes together and is applied in the real world. And hopefully I can give you some illustration how that's happening. And the best way to do that, I usually think, is actually with video. We've been watching a bunch of dense slides right now, so we're going to stop real quick with a couple of members of the team here. We did a quick presentation on actually how these different tokenization applications have been brought to market over time. Some of you might be familiar with some of them already, but you may not have heard of all of them here. And so we'll watch a quick video here.
We're still seeing your slide deck.
What's that, Dan?
We're still seeing your slide deck, not the video.
Oh, that would be why. Let me fix that real quick. Sorry. Cheers. All right. Sorry about that.
So let's say you have to read an incredibly long email from your boss that you have to finish before the big...
Oh, this is the wrong thing. I apologize, folks. I don't know what happened.
Cheers.
I assume everyone can hear this.
I am glad we made it here live. You dropped like a bat out of hell.
Well, did you want to make it here or not? I mean, speaking of drinks, why don't you buy the first round since you made all that crypto money?
Yeah, that's true. You made all that crypto money. I'm going to take myself a tequila.
Yeah, I'll take one too.
He's got, look here. All right. I will take care of the first round. That is it. Simply because they accept crypto.
All right.
Okay.
We have posters already.
Here we go. All right, guys.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Oh, man. Smooth right. So what you just saw was me using my crypto to pay for these drinks. You've probably heard of it. Different tokens, including Bitcoin, Shiba, and a few others, are becoming very real substitutes to the cash we use every day. Up until a few years ago, transactions were facilitated using paper cash or credit cards linked to bank accounts, which in turn still held that paper cash. So we call currencies of this sort fiat. Fiat transactions have traditionally been the most efficient method of payment because you have ways to verify the authenticity of the value involved within the transaction. Whether that be dollar values on the paper cash, money bill markers, or even credit card companies verifying if you have the funds in your account before completing the buyer's transaction. These are just some of the benefits that crypto and the blockchain provide. An automatic, trusted, and transparent process that everyone in the ecosystem can participate in equally. And since merchants like A Street are already accepting electronic payments on-site via credit cards and Apple Pay, it makes it even easier for them to integrate the small changes needed for them to also accept payments in crypto. Picture this. You invest $10 into your token of choice, and the price of a tequila soda is also $10. Suddenly, your crypto appreciates in price to $12 over the course of a week. You go to A Street, buy your usual tequila soda, but this time, you essentially purchase that tequila soda with $2 of fiat value left over. The merchant, on the flip side, has their turn to benefit from token appreciation after the transaction. This is something that everybody is winning from. Now, do you want to pay with the crypto? That's a question you have to ask yourself. But for me, I'm fiat broke, but I'm crypto rich. Shots, can we talk about these?
Yeah, man. I mean, I have this NFT that I own. I just show it to the bartender every time I come to A Street, and I get free to run shots.
I wish you could have told me. I could have just wired you some crypto, and you could have got the first round.
Yeah, or you could just get your own NFT.
That's fair.
All right, cheers. So the technology behind these cryptocurrencies called blockchain also made it possible for digital art to be tokenized, so that ownership of the art can be assigned to the token holder. These tokens, called NFTs, by design are unique one-of-one tokens that can only be owned by one person. Think of the NFT like a digital history where I can see when, for how much, and to who all the art was sold to previously, thanks to this technology. And an NFT can give you real world benefits too. For example, the NFT that I own actually gives me a free round of shots here at 8th Street. I just show that I own it to the bartender and they give me my round. It's that easy to make an NFT more valuable than just the unique art behind the token. That's why I say it's always happy hour for me.
Well, cheers again.
Cheers again.
So, you know, I'm actually a token holder here. So I'm doing my job by drinking here.
Yeah? Tell me more about that.
Well, I know it sounds too good to be true, but
Yeah.
actually, I'm an investor through tokens that they sold. I have a piece of ownership in the business. So every time we're drinking here, I get a little bit of money.
How did you even do that?
Security tokens.
I'm confused still.
What's the
Yeah.
security token?
All right. It's very simple. It's like an investment token. So instead of your NFT or just paying with crypto, we actually have ownership where we're drinking at. In this case, we can scan this little neat QR code and instantly become owners.
I was wondering what that is.
Wait, are you telling me that you're making money off of us drinking here?
That is correct.
Explain that investment token to me.
Well, it's like buying a stock on Wall Street, except a joint like 8th Street here, they wouldn't be able to get liquid on Wall Street. It would cost millions of dollars. So instead, security tokens are kind of like a workaround Wall Street, an easier digital way to make it possible for us to invest.
Wow, so I don't have to be a millionaire or anything. I can just put in a couple thousand?
You can just scan this QR code right here.
Wow, that's gonna justify all
Can
my
I
drinking
buy a
here.
token with crypto?
You could.
Just like hop in there right now. Trying to make money on this again.
Yeah.
So we actually just learned about 3 different types of tokens, all using the same technology. The first one, cryptocurrencies. Makes it easy and simple to send tokens to others, which, if these tokens have value, means you're instantly sending value to someone like a store, friend, or even paying out a bet. The second one, NFTs, well, they make it easy to assign ownership rights to art so that there can only be a limited number of owners in a collection or a single piece of art. Some art, like music and royalty deals, they offer attractive investment benefits, which make them start to look a little bit like our third type of token, security tokens. These so-called stock tokens, they enable investors legal protections and rights to a business opportunity, whether it's property, your cousin's startup idea, or a local restaurant or bar you like 8th Street here. So if you thought this video was cool and you learned something.
All right. Let me make sure that the right screen is shared. I am definitely not going to get into a career of acting, but hopefully that, gave a little bit of an example of the different use cases that I would say are probably the most popular at this point in time. But let's break them down just so that we have a clear understanding of why they're being used in society like this, right? And I think we've all heard of Bitcoin. It's the #1 largest cryptocurrency. And the reason for that is, one, obviously the technology that Dan just explained to us in the last 20 minutes. That is essentially a value proposition, a competitor to not just banks, but like what we're talking about is fiat in general. So in that regard, Bitcoin is really seen as a store of value. Almost look at it like a digital gold. There's a finite amount of Bitcoin that are in existence, hence the scarcity, which creates a demand behind it. But the fact that it's open, trusted, unhackable, and can be used in this digital ecosystem, that's what gives its value according to the market, and at least for its use case. It wasn't until a new blockchain technology called Ethereum, a sort of improved version of Bitcoin because it uses a different programming language, enabled actually that variability, the idea that you could program these blockchains. So instead of just the database acting as a source of information, we now are actually able to leverage, as Dan mentioned, these smart contracts, really just a fancy way of saying algorithms and programming language that'll enable us to leverage these blockchains. And Ethereum is not the only one. As Dan had mentioned, IBM created and worked with Hyperledger, their own version. So there's lots of different programmable ledgers. Ethereum just happens to be the largest one. And by largest one, we define that by the number of developers, the number of applications, the number of users that are interacting with this blockchain every day, every second. And that's where we saw this new application layer arise. Instead of just the functionality of payments, which what Bitcoin brought us, we can now leverage these benefits of creating NFTs. As we mentioned in the video, there was something that came about shortly after the launch of Ethereum called ICOs, initial coin offerings. This was the idea that I could now create a token. Again, this was this new version of tokenization that was represented on the Ethereum ledger. And in this case, it programmed in different utility, different values. We saw all kinds of projects being launched, just like the supply chain example that we saw, projects trying to create new fiat currencies, or just simply, trying to, ambitiously change various industries using this new technology. And it enabled anyone around the world with a wallet, with a token that interacted with the Ethereum blockchain, to be able to purchase these tokens instantaneously. Again, this is extremely important because as a part of this fundraising process, we didn't interact with a broker dealer. They most probably didn't interact with a lawyer. There was no legal agreements signed. It was an anonymous transaction in many examples. And again, it was instantaneous thanks to the smart contracts being able to confirm that the buyer and the seller has what is needed in order to make the transaction go through. And so as a result, billions of dollars all around the world were raised. And we'll get into the regulation as to what happened, but it really opened up the eyes to people about this is a new layer of blockchain technology that potentially could be far more disruptive than just this concept of Bitcoin as itself. And that's where we saw what I really look at is, with the ICOs and the NFTs are kind of like the baby tokens. When we want to talk about tokens for grownups, we're looking at things like stable coins and security tokens. As we mentioned in the video, securities tokens is really what they should be called. Sometimes referred to as digital securities. The SEC refers to them as digital asset securities. But specifically, the nomenclature in the industry has gone to just be simply security tokens. And this means we are playing in the purview of the real world, of the regulators, which means we have to work with, existing regulation, which is something that a lot of these other crypto technologies try to get around. That's sort of part of their very nature, is to say, we don't want to deal with middlemen. We don't want to deal with regulators. So this is a very new concept of blockchain that's really only been around for the last few years, give it 3 or 4, where again, we're now tying in real world assets. The idea that someone like Circle, which is one of the largest stablecoin issuers here in the United States, it's backed by Goldman Sachs, it partnered with Coinbase. And this was their way of enabling people to go ahead and take real fiat money and turn it into digital fiat money. And it's supposedly backed 1-to-1. But this is a really big example of, again, when you tie into the real world, because now there's this concept of, is the stable coin fully backed? We now have to take the word for Circle. There is no, distributed ledger that we can go check to make sure that the reserves, that the fiat dollars we gave are kept where they are. There is no mechanism of doing that. So there's now this point of failure. And this is where many in the crypto industry, fear centralization and fear these types of issues. In my world, I believe this is the future because, of course, regulation is not going to go anywhere. And the more and more this become prevalent use cases, the more and more likely that the regulators are going to enforce and they're going to, try to regulate. There are many other use cases that are coming about. I don't want to get too distracted, but again, now that you understand this concept of being able to leverage a trustless data mechanism to basically enable programs and applications, you can do pretty much just about anything. Again, anything's, I'm not necessarily quoting as to whether it's compliant with the law or not. There is nothing that can stop Bitcoin right now other than the government saying, hey, we're not going to allow Bitcoin transactions. But there is nothing stopping the network from continuing to operate by anyone who is participating on the network. And that's why we're seeing all kinds of new use cases. A really cool one is fan tokens. Again, nothing to do with securities, not trying to do benefits, just a very basic use case of, hey, there's a limited number of fan tokens. They give me perks, maybe discounts to ticket sales, maybe memorabilia, maybe in a special event or a community channel. and I can use this fan token to get access to it, and I can trade it on the secondary market because, again, it operates on the blockchain. So as long as the marketplace supports that token, it's super easy to provide marketplace services for. There's another example called DAO tokens. That stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. This is just the simple idea that, look, if you own a token, that represents one vote. And now we can simply create a system where we can leverage these DAO tokens to create a consensus system that's decentralized, where humans can participate and vote on decisions. One of those examples is what you're reading there as a headline. There was something called the Constitution DAO that came out a little while ago, where Sotheby's was auctioning off one of 11 and one of 2 privately owned constitutions of the United States. So what did the internet decide to do? Let's form a DAO, raise as much money possible together to buy the DAO tokens. You're essentially pledging your money to the group in order to purchase the Constitution. And they went ahead and competed toe-to-toe, actually, with none other than Kenneth Griffin in the end. And ultimately lost because if you think about it, they actually had already announced how much they had raised. And once the Sotheby's was live, all it took was for Ken to figure out what's their limit, and he would have to bid higher than, right? Needless to say, they lost. But instead of just giving back tokens and the pledges, which some people could do, they actually created another token that could be used for future value. That's it. It's just the hype around this. And supposedly, according to markets, it went from roughly $42 million raised in order to purchase the Constitution, suddenly now to $300 million according to market, because again, people believe that these specific tokens might be used for a future purchase, or because there's already a community behind them, there's more chance that they'll turn into something more valuable. The last example is more of a business use case where, for example, if you're trading using tokens, you can potentially enable loyalty through them. So instead of leveraging, say, a fiat token to purchase something or a different token, I'm going to enable my token to leverage my blockchain-based platform because it's going to give you an incentive. And for me, it's going to create demand behind the token itself. The more and more users that are on my platform, the number of available tokens doesn't change. Therefore, the price is going to go up as more and more people want access to those discounts and benefits as they transact. Those are, again, just a few, or we're only just scratching the surface of probably what's going to be in a few years, 3 or 4 more new jargon terms of different types of tokens. But I think now that we have hopefully all a good understanding of how this technology is being used, it's really important to understand how it's been regulated. Since the original conception in 2008, a year later, Bitcoin was released. And its earliest days, we saw mostly the use for illicit and anonymous activity. And, some, of course, communities that were interested in the underlying technology and trying to make it real. So you had this interesting world of, okay, you have, again, criminals who see this as a useful technology to do money laundering or trying to hide assets, or even use it to make payments that aren't traced by the government. And at the same time, which is something called the Silk Road, this was a marketplace that came about to kind of manage all the transactions for this, be the marketplace for it. And then, of course, at the same time, we had the community trying to, be proudful about the fact that they've come up with a new solution that isn't stuck to any government, and it's going to be this financially freedom creating technology. As a result, of course, the FBI and others shut down the Silk Road and have been, cracking down on similar activity. But as a result of the good doers and the ambassadors, we saw exchanges around the world start to, entertain and launch, crypto trading, some of which were shut down by regulators. Some of them were shut down, like Mt. Gox, if you've heard of that one, by a hacker. So exchanges became the focus for regulators, because that's where a lot of the trading, that's where a lot of the activity in the blockchain world, came to. This is, even to this day, there is still confusion between regulatory bodies as to what should be, who should be regulating or enforcing what cryptos. And so back then, that was more so the case. The United States were, kind of pigeoned Bitcoin into a money transmitter issue. Other countries just went ahead and outright banned it so that they didn't have to figure it out yet. And others embraced it and said, we're going to recognize that this is a separate asset class altogether. Since then, as I mentioned earlier, we saw that rise of the initial coin offerings. This was really something that forced the SEC to take notice and to intervene, because from their perspective, most of these ICOs, as a result of fundraising money for their projects in order to create a return for their investors, would violate the Howey tests. And I'm sure everyone in the room is familiar with the Howey test, which the SEC uses to determine whether something's a security. And from their perspective, both in the previous term from the previous SEC chairman, as well as the current SEC chairman, Gary Gensler, they still continue to see to this day most cryptocurrencies that are out there as securities. And so, through 2017 and through 2020, they went after the bad actors, the fraudsters, as well as those who were just ignorant of the law, and simply, focused mostly on making examples out of people, very light fines, but returning all of the money back to investors. This happened with a cryptocurrency called Telegram that had raised billions of dollars. And it happened to many, many other ICOs. It's probably well over hundreds of enforcement actions to date, if it is that many. And then, of course, now today, it's hard for anyone not to have heard of an NFT or to have heard of Bitcoin, or in some form or another, been exposed to all of this. So as a result, now what we're seeing is legislators in the last year alone, I think something more than 20 different bills focused around cryptocurrency were introduced. None of them passed. So again, we still continue with, ambiguity when it comes to these different assets and these different token types and how they're regulated and how they can be used, which of course creates confusion for the actual industry who's trying to leverage this technology to create business and value for the entire world. So I think that's going to be a very interesting conversation this year specifically, as well as in the next year, as other countries around the world, are actually passing laws and things like that, which we'll get to in a second. But just to really, go through the impact here, we're talking about the IRS, treating crypto as property. We're talking about the SEC looking at them as investments. The CFTC believes this is against their purview, and therefore the SEC is wrong. And we have this Ripple case, which I want to touch on, which is another cryptocurrency. It's one of the largest in the world. It did $1 billion plus ICO. And 6 years later, the SEC went after them and said, you violated securities law. Right now, Ripple is saying, you took your time. You never even knew whether we were a security or not. So you were in the wrong. But at the end of the day, the really important implications of this is that they could set a precedent one way or the other, a precedent that if XRP is a security, many, many other coins that act and function similarly or did an ICO also likely are securities. On the other hand, if they're given a pass and maybe just a fine, perhaps it's a precedent for many other coins to say, okay, we are not a security so long as we didn't, do these violations. There is, of course, this dark side of crypto that I mentioned earlier, not just criminals, but a lot of market manipulation. There are meme coins that get very excited. Just the other day, Elon Musk talked about a new coin that soared 10,000+% or something like that. And that's because McDonald's entered the chat, if you will. And of course, people are taking advantage of this. People don't know what they're buying per se. There's not a lot of there's no regulation per se, and there's not a lot of controls in place to prevent people from getting scammed or being taken advantage of. In fact, there is this concept of decentralized finance that has essentially a concept where they're trying to make a new banking system without a single bank actually involved, or regulator for that matter. And now to date, we've seen almost $500 billion worth of loans get locked up into smart contracts that are all built on these various, cryptocurrencies that have a lot of market manipulation and a lot of issues. And a lot of people think there's a possible house of cards that could collapse $500 billion worth of wealth, and that's a extreme amount of money. And then, of course, again, we've got that repeated confusion, and this creates an opportunity internationally. We are seeing, El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as an actual currency standard in order to get off of the concentration risk of being on the US dollar. We see Singapore launching many, many different exchanges and regulations and laws to create a crypto-friendly ecosystem and potentially compete to become the next New York. We saw China a couple of years ago launch the largest central bank digital currency to date, which now means that there are ATMs in China where you can take your physical cash and get digital, and vice versa. And in every major city in China and every major merchant accepts this new currency. And again, finally, if cryptos succeed and this technology sticks around, who owns the infrastructure? Dan mentioned, to this date, Bitcoin has not been hacked. But there is potentially a point of failure, because if all of our data ultimately ends up on this technology, it's pretty important that we know that somebody can control it or hack it, etc. So now that we want to end on the takeaways, I know we don't have too much time left, but hopefully, Dan and I gave you guys all a good explanation that this is something that's going to, take over the entire world. Many people call blockchain the next internet. Mark Andreessen, a famous venture capitalist, said that software would eat the world. Well, software will eventually be powered by blockchain because of all of the benefits that it brings. We're, in finance, in my world, just to give you a quick example, we're talking about, smart contracts being able to settle major loans and collateralization contracts, so that in the event of equity or a different type of collateral needing to be moved, once again, no middleman, it's automatically assigned to the right party in the event of a failed payment or other trigger event. Securities are built on mistrust, right? The entire financial system has layers of middlemen because no one trusts each other with their data. Thanks to smart contracts, that problem goes away, and we can enable instant clearing and settlement. We can enable instant distributions. The example, the Rube Goldman example Dan gave earlier, waterfall structures happen all the time in real estate and in various large securities. Smart contracts automate all of these so that you don't need to figure out who owns what and do manual payments to people, voting, etc. The list goes on. And this is all because we're able to leverage a technology stack, a data stack that, again, removes this need for trust. I cannot emphasize how disruptive that is.
Again, really quick, if I could just jump in.
Please.
Those of you who have heard of the phrase Web 3.0, that's what Herwig just talked about. It's the incorporation of blockchain distributed ledger technology into the internet that we use. It's the use of distributed ledger technology into our everyday life is Web 3.0, which is what many people see to be the next big wave of technological investment and revolution, and is a commonly thrown around phrase. So sorry for interrupting, but takeaway number one, the future looks like it's turning towards this technology, and Web 3.0 is the big brand name that's thrown onto that.
Absolutely. And not, I don't think we mentioned it earlier, our very own Fed is also looking into a central bank digital currency. We've seen how Mayor Suarez in Miami has embraced, this technology to try and create a more sustainable city. So this is definitely touching even the government. And in my world, this is, to me, hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of real estate, public equities, private equities, alternative assets, debt, and the like. That's all going to be put on the blockchain. This means that you can no longer, short sell a company more than 100% of its outstanding stock, because a blockchain would know who all the owners are instantaneously and know exactly how much is available for such an exercise. The idea that no longer you need to rely on a 9:30 to 4:30 capital markets system. Right now, markets can be enabled 24/7. There are digital asset marketplaces for security tokens that are licensed and regulated that are trading 24/7. That is a massive disruption for Wall Street in itself. The idea that you can now instantly settle securities and instantly transfer them into a different asset is absolutely fascinating, from market theory as well as just customer engagement, investor potential, automation, AI. All of these things are going to leverage this new data and this new ecosystem to fundamentally flip Wall Street on its head, because again, the gatekeepers, the banks, will no longer necessarily be in charge. They'll have to play fair and more competitively. And that's really what the last takeaway is. A third of the world is unbanked, and thanks to a computer or a phone, you would technically be able to access a banking system, a financial ecosystem that can enable you loans, that can enable you, opportunity to invest in new assets all around the world, and the opportunity to actually, further engage with your world. The whole problem with this is as all of this innovation continues to actually, expand and explode, and we're unable to keep up with it, the regulators are already so far behind. And so this is where all of the law really comes down to. This is so important. Dan likes to use the example of, hey, if we do that pizza transaction, but what if the token that I used was previously purchased by somebody in Djibouti, and maybe I'm located in the Bahamas, and the pizza place is actually owned by a Japanese company, and all of that can be adding layers of complexity, because in the event of a lawsuit or anything that goes wrong, this is where lawyers need to step in. So questions that I leave you with is, how do you look at this technology? We have to recognize, is it, can it be stopped? Can it even be regulated? How are we going to deal with this issue? It's now in the trillions of dollars. Millions of people, if not maybe hundreds of millions of people, have now interacted with crypto. And I think the law is going to experience its own level of disruption. A lot of these smart contracts are going to enable super easy legal tasks to be automated and taken away of. At the same time, all of these new legal issues that are being introduced by the token technology is creating a high demand, extremely valuable demand for those who focus on the niche and the complex type of law. So that's what I'll leave you with. Hopefully, y'all learned at least one thing, at least from Dan. And we're happy to answer any questions with any time. I'll pass it back to Dan just to see if he had any last parting notes.
I love that presentation. Thank you, Regan. There are a couple points from a legal point of view for the bar. The ways that this technology is being adopted now is pretty eye-opening. Years ago, I'm talking about 3 or 4 years ago, China has its own digital court system. They passed a rule that said that evidence that is procured off of a distributed ledger is automatically self-authenticating. That means that it's deemed verified and authenticated in a court. It doesn't have to be authenticated by a witness. And just imagine litigation where all the evidence is already there, already authenticated, the story is already played out in paper, and just gets handed to the court to be adjudicated. If we think about notarization and how that's changed during the pandemic with the change in Florida to allowing virtual notaries, that's expanded our ability to do so much as lawyers remotely through Zoom and elsewhere. All we need is one slight more pivot in how notarization is handled, and then real estate transactions can be transitioned completely to a blockchain system where smart contracts step in, and real estate transactions can get recorded, and even corporate and civil records could be kept and maintained automatically through a smart contract system. And then you look at the chain of custody of something, or if you look at a property title, you'll be able to see this immutable record and this chain of custody of something that's been verified through a blockchain through this new form of notarization, which has already been legalized and adopted in some states. Virginia's progressive on it, Vermont's progressive on it. And one thing that we saw during the pandemic is that lawyers stay busy. Real estate keeps transacting, and there is a need to be able to do this stuff remotely, and the world's not turning away from that. And of course, that opens up the door to all these possibilities of expanding your portfolio of clients and opportunities around the world. And with that comes crazy cross-border issues. One of the biggest problems that I face with my clients when they come to me with a crypto problem is that they've usually signed on to a platform that has a choice of law and a venue, jurisdiction that they don't want to be in. So they have a lot of money tied up on a platform that requires arbitration in Hong Kong. And they didn't realize that. And we're now dealing with this interplay of people who are very casually transacting in complex cross-border industries and cross-border monetary transactions that have value, where if you bought one Bitcoin 3 years ago, there's a point where that Bitcoin was worth $70,000. Say you bought 5 of them, that's a lot of money, and all of a sudden it gets frozen up, and you don't realize that to get it out, you have to sue in Hong Kong. And these are problems that the US judicial system hasn't really tackled yet. In the cases that exist so far, they've found jurisdiction where a online platform is seen as doing business in a jurisdiction, the federal courts have, where people are accessing that platform and transacting on it digitally in a state. And they'll say, okay, that means you've exposed yourself to that venue and jurisdiction's appropriate. But it's going to get more complex, and it's going to be a big test for us and for the courts to weed through these jurisdictional issues for those of us who are litigating it, to figure it out. And more excitedly, for those of us who are transacting in it, to come up with new systems to help our clients while still maintaining lucrative and valuable legal careers and adding value to transactions that in some ways could be supplanted by these smart contracts. So I'll stop talking. We've hit our hour and change by 2 minutes. Thank you, Herwig, for joining us for this. Really great to have someone who has their feet in the ground, who isn't a lawyer and really is playing in this space. And Woody, I don't know if we have time for some questions, but we're open to them.
We definitely do. First, I want to say thank you and give you a round of applause. I imagine others would clap out loud. I got a number of text messages saying how great this was. So let me relay that to you, since they can't relay that to you. I would like to let there be questions, but I noticed leadership timed their entrance to be perfect with the end of the CLE. So if you both have time to stick around, I hear the leadership talk is a 45-minute presentation they have for us. So I'll let one speak. We're back to the question part of our CLE. If anyone has questions they want to ask, or I can just read, I saw 1 or 2 come across the chat. Hearing no one, let me read one that I just saw come across the chat. I see processing power or quantum as a limiting factor that underpins value, and thus it seems logical to me that a significant increase in the efficiency of that processing could affect value by decreasing manufacturing cost, or perhaps that efficiency also fixed or immutable. Will you comment?
Well, I love the amount of big words used in that, and hat tip to the lawyers for putting that together. I translate that question as, what do we think quantum computing is going to be doing? And how is that going to impact what we're looking at? And is there really a value add considering the cost and expense that goes along with it? I'm happy to jump in really quick, Herwig, and just say that I don't think that quantum computing and the effect of that technology in any way has been realized. In many ways, shapes and forms, it's still a proof of concept. There are only so many quantum computers. IBM has one, Google has one. There are only select private companies and academic institutions with them. It's not a commonplace thing, and they're not that reliable. They actually rely on temperature and a lot of other variables to perform these complex calculations. Really quickly, a computer works by doing ones and zeros. We know this, right? Everyone hopefully knows ones and zeros at this point. Just like everyone knows, hopefully at this point, to take your shoes off when you go through TSA security. Computers have been around for longer than that. Now, quantum computing uses variables beyond 1 and 0. And so that's what distinguishes it from our modern computer set, is that it goes beyond that realm of just binary computation. I think that once that technology becomes more commonplace, just like anything else, it'll be more accessible, and it will have a lot of common use cases, and it will also blow up everything that we're currently looking at, because it'll be so powerful, it will shift how we view things. And so it's one of those space age leaps that will happen once they're able to do it, but we're still talking about the Wright brothers. And we've got another 35 years before the moon landing, hopefully a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I think you're fully spot on. I think the only comment I'll add is, for the quantum computing, it can be seen to many as a threat to blockchain. The idea being that if it works, and let's say China's got a few of them, they could, in theory, try to hack the blockchain nodes that are powering the blockchain and therefore override them and therefore corrupt and hack the actual blockchain, right? To this date, that has never happened with Bitcoin, and that continues to be its main value proposition. I'm not a quantum computing expert. I think Dan laid it out very well, but the going theory usually is that with technologies like this, as they come about, not only can they be used negatively, but at the same time, they're just examined equally for the force of good. So it's almost like we're leveling up our cryptography game with quantum computing, but at the same time, these blockchains will leverage that technology to also make themselves more secure and more difficult to penetrate. So it's definitely an interesting thing to explore, but I think Dan said it right. It's far off, at least in the short term.
And Woody, before I take off my nerd hat, which I don't know if I can take it off, but someone commented about Bitcoin verification, and you're right, it does use a combination of proof of work and consensus based. It's a combination of the two. That's in the slides. If I said only proof of work for Bitcoin, that's not follow the slides. It's both. The Bitcoin uses proof of work and consensus.
So that was Alex's comment, and we can do the nerd piece in a minute. I like that. So what I'm going to do is ask if Tracy can pause the recording for just a second. All right, that worked. All right, we're back in our CLE. I'll just read some of the questions that came in through the chat and throw it to you guys to respond. Any thoughts or predictions on the forthcoming Biden executive order?
Well, it'd be tough to say anything with any guarantee, but I can tell you that, again, Gary Gensler, who's the SEC, the chairman, he's been very proactive with trying to meet with Congress and the president and the likes and trying to rein in as much authority as possible. He really wants to regulate crypto. And for those of you who don't know, Gary Gensler taught a course at MIT on blockchain. So he knows every single application. He understands it very concretely. Many would disagree with his views on how it should be managed and regulated, but he's full on intending on moving forward as such. So I imagine, given that there's a lot of attention around crypto lately, and the fact that Biden hasn't necessarily revealed a lot of pro stances towards the technology, it can probably be assumed that the order or executive order is going to be targeted towards reeling in or trying to create some kind of authority for specific regulators to be able to control the markets more. What do you think, Dan?
I think there are two key points. One, if anyone can predict what's going to happen with this current government, I would love to have a drink with you and walk through it all. I think that as a trend, people's perception and entities' perception of the stability and ability of the United States government to achieve its goals is inversely proportional to their confidence in cryptocurrency as a whole. And generally that plays out elsewhere too, where people view governments to be less effective. There is a view towards alternatives. Look at the lack of faith in the stability of Venezuela. I'm not analogizing in any way what's going on here with Venezuela, but it took disruption of Venezuela for a boon in cryptocurrency there to occur because people needed an alternative. I do think that the Biden administration wants to course correct on that. I also think that Chair Gensler, and to correct Herwig, this is actually kind of a cool fact. He is the first SEC chair because he wanted to de-gender the position. And so Gary Gensler is the chair of the SEC, not a chairman. And
at least he's forward thinking.
He is. He is. And I think that the U.S. is in a really novel place on this really innovative technological moment where so much of it relies on our infrastructure, our goodwill, and our internet capacity, as well as our business infrastructure. And so we are in this moment where the U.S. still has an ability to shift what happens, and the U.S. can regain some of its credibility and course correct in a way to counter what many might see as a moment of instability. And if you look at what's going on in other countries, you have former Soviet republics like Georgia that is actively adopting it and incentivizing mining. And then you have countries like China, which is prohibiting mining of certain coins. And so there seems to be a lot of instability and uncertainty as to how to best handle this technology. And if the US takes a definitive position that provides a robust perspective that other countries can model themselves after, that would be tremendous. But then again, we have to see how that plays out in all practicality, right?
Okay. Next question. Thoughts on the IMF request to El Salvador to remove Bitcoin as legal tender and whether any other nation states will adopt in 2022?
Tall lift shits. Good questions, man.
Oh, I like it. You want to go first or me?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And we were actually, Herwig and I were just talking about this before this. The IMF is in an interesting position because it's also similarly trying to wrap its hands around an alternate economy that it's not currently under its purview. And so it makes sense that they would try to rein in something that they currently don't have their hands and capabilities around. That said, the cat is kind of out of the bag, especially with regards to El Salvador, because El Salvador, if for those of you who aren't aware, and Herwig talked about in his presentation, officially recognizes Bitcoin as legal tender and as an official currency. It issued Bitcoin to every citizen of El Salvador and created its own El Salvadorian wallet system with El Salvadorian ATMs throughout the country. And so every citizen got a little wallet with some Bitcoin in it that actually became relatively substantial in comparison to like the average income in El Salvador. And I don't think that they're going to be giving up on it that soon. It was a big pitch. The president of El Salvador has actually promoted the idea of building a Bitcoin city that I believe he wants to shape like the Bitcoin logo. And I'm not making this up, in El Salvador. And it will be robustly focused on this crypto endeavor, industry based around it, fueled through alternative energy resources. And the IMF saying, please stop doing this, is going to be quickly and harshly rebutted by the president making this a strong tent post of his re-election campaign. And to the next, there are rumors as to another country adopting, in South America, adopting Bitcoin as national legal tender. And Herwig was the one who clued me in on what country it might be, which makes a lot of sense because that country is a repository for a lot of its neighbors' wealth. And if anyone has any guesses as what that country might be, you're welcome to shout it out. If not, I'll leave it to Herwig to clue us in.
I only know rumors, but I think you nailed it. You know, the IMF is just doing its job, and it has a very similar, even potentially more strict and conservative stance in the U.S. when it comes to enforcing policy and determining how they want to support other countries with resources, et cetera. And so obviously, IMF has no control once El Salvador goes on the Bitcoin standard. They obviously see a lot of risks with Bitcoin underlying. So if this, don't look at like client or, this customer, if you will, decides to go away from, following their rules, then obviously they're going to tell them, if you do this, we're not gonna support you. For the president of El Salvador, this is like, free press for him. He wants to use this and be like, thank you, IMF, for telling me to do this. We would never, ever in a million years decide to reverse course. He's almost prophetic about, his belief in Bitcoin. And to go even further, how is he so confident? Well, he is actually leveraging the nearby volcano and using geothermal power to actually mine Bitcoin and tie those actual mining gains to a government bond, $1 billion or $800 million government bond that is issued and purchased actually as a security token, where institutions and investors all around the world will be able to buy this Bitcoin-based government bond backed by the volcano on El Salvador mining operation. And as a result, no longer needs IMF or US or anybody else's support. Now the country is self-sustainable. So that's his belief. That's where he believes he's going to get all the money to also develop his Bitcoin nation. And there are others that potentially may be following suit. I have heard the rumor that potentially, Uruguay may be following suit. And it's no secret that other countries that are especially also suffering from currency volatility, they're also looking at this as a potential long-term solution. I have no personal opinion on, how it's going to go, but hopefully that at least gives you a little bit of a clearer explanation as to what's going on in El Salvador.
Thank you so much. So there was one more question posted. We've got about 2 minutes left for the meeting, which is going to be the answer to this question from you guys, hopefully. And then Robert and I are going to do the substantive part of the meeting, if we can, in the last couple of minutes before we resolve. But let me ask the question to you guys. How do you believe big banks are going to respond to the rapid expansion of DeFi and other services that were traditionally served by centralized institutions, to the extent you can answer quickly?
Creatively. And if you have follow-up questions, you're welcome to reach out to me at Mark McDull Hayden, and happy to talk further about this. But they're going to have to be very creative in how they counter this next wave. And I know they're already proactively figuring out ways to monetize it and create their own DeFi systems to bring it underneath their umbrellas.
100%. They've all got teams exploring this space, playing around with it. I believe there'll be an intersection of hi-fi, hybrid finance. The idea that you can leverage autonomous market makers instead of leveraging on a decentralized community. A big bank can come in and leverage the same technology in a much, much bigger way for a much, much bigger industry and asset class. That's what I'm always preaching here. When we look at the crypto industry, there are literally asset managers around the world with more assets than the entire value of the crypto industry today. That just goes to show you that we have such a long way to go when it comes to penetrating the financial world with this technology. But it's definitely clear that the banks are not, just going to let this, slide by. It's going to be, whether it be politically and legally, or whether it be just, moving bigger and faster and taking advantage of their resources to basically create competitive moats, as any, major industry would do. And
Herwig has a whole collection of videos online through a security token group, and he has a show where he talks about and explores these issues. They're very worthwhile. Highly recommend you check them out.
Security Token Show on YouTube. I've got over 125 episodes next Monday, all different topics. So definitely feel free, dive in, let me know your thoughts, feedback, suggestions.
Daniel and Herwig, thank you both very much. This is course number 5776. On behalf of the task force and the section, we really appreciate it. And on behalf of everyone that attended, great job. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.